Kelsey Boss, the founder of Compleo and doctor of physical therapy. I work mostly with babies, so today I brought in one of our wonderful pelvic floor therapists, Karon. I am 5 weeks postpartum, and so she came over to my house today to chat with me a little bit about postpartum recovery. So first, Karon, can you just tell us a little bit about your background, what you do?
Yes, so I am a pelvic floor occupational therapist. I am the only occupational therapist who does pelvic floor therapy in Waco, so proud to have that title and to be representing that at Compleo. Pelvic floor occupational therapy, we do a lot of very similar things in crossover as PT, but we really are skilled at taking a look at the psychosocial aspects of what pelvic floor dysfunction has on a person's life.
Okay, so our pelvic floor team really helped me a lot prepare for labor and delivery, and this one went so much smoother than the first one, so I'm going to credit y'all for that. I did not do all the hip mobility and all the things the first time around, so I really think y'all's preparation help is one of the reasons I was able to labor successfully and without tearing and things like that, and so I really wanted to make sure the recovery stage goes just as well.
Yeah.
So kind of in those first couple weeks, I've just been like walking and working on like deep breathing.
Yep.
So kind of in that first month, what are your recommendations post-delivery?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that first time, second time, however many times, we don't realize is how forward we're pulled with baby. We're constantly carrying, we're lifting things, we're breastfeeding, even giving a bottle. We're constantly being pulled forward. So anything you can do in that first month that brings you out of that posture of being pulled forward is really beneficial. Even walking, just making sure that while you're walking, shoulders are pulled back, you're engaging core as much as you can, and just being more mindful of your body positioning throughout the day because we're in so many dynamic positions with baby.
So what are your favorite like stretches? Like getting on a foam roller and doing snow angels,
Yes.
or like leaning against the wall and doing open books? Like what are your favorite stretches to work with that?
Both. I love the foam roller. Just being able to lay down on the foam roller and like a snow angel coming up and down. I love doing a doorway stretch where you put both arms in between the door and you just kind of pull forward. Honestly, just laying down on the ground and making sure that your shoulders can touch the ground can be really beneficial as well.
I don't think I've laid flat on my back much. Like I'm always just holding them. So just laying flat will definitely, I guess, help stretch without even
it does.
going through a whole exercise routine.
Yeah.
I know one thing, like I said, and I think half of this is luck. I know you can do all the right things and have maybe a more complicated delivery or things not go wrong, but maybe not be exactly what you pictured.
Yeah.
Luckily this time that was not the case for me. So I started like walking pretty quickly and a lot of people, mothers, grandmothers, kept saying, you're doing too much. You're moving too quickly.
Yeah.
You should just be sitting at home. And I'm not the personality to just sit at home. So is there can you do too much too quickly if you're feeling good? Like, do you need to put limits on how much you're walking or starting to exercise or move?
Yeah.
In those first 2 months?
It's different for everybody. And I think intuitively you kind of know whether or not you can move more with second baby or, against the experience with the first baby. I would say early postpartum, if you are moving more and you're starting to feel too much fatigue too early, that postpartum bleeding is kind of increasing again. You're getting dizzy, lightheaded. Those can be signs that you just need to take it a little bit more easy. Another thing too, postpartum, if you're wanting to move a little bit earlier, it's just making sure that you're getting enough liquids and you're getting a good, well-balanced diet. It's really easy to not postpartum.
Yes.
So, and again, there's balance with everything, but just making sure that if moving your body earlier is what you're wanting to do postpartum, balancing it out with that diet and fluid intake.
And that rest that we're all supposed to be getting that may or may not be possible with babies.
Exactly.
Baby sleep. So what are some signs that we should call a pelvic floor therapist? Like I said, I know I'm a PT, but I do all the babies. So
yes.
What are some signs that I should call one of y'all to check in for an appointment?
Yeah. So I'm biased and I totally think everybody postpartum should have at least a visit to decide whether or not it's appropriate to do a plan of care. But Specific signs that you might be having some pelvic floor dysfunction are leaking, not being able to go poop on the toilet, just having way too much constipation, too much pain abdominally. If you're having some of that abdominal coning, so it can be, that's diastasis is what we call it. When you're front loading, like leaning back, when you need to use your core for different things, if you're noticing some of that coning, that can be a sign. The last thing is pain. If you're having a lot of pain abdominally, but also vaginally, like if you tore and just that area is not getting any better, that can be an indicator that you need to come see a pelvic floor therapist. Also with cesarean too. Cesarean recovery is really big, and we really want to make sure that you have a lot of mobility in the abdominal area after you've had a cesarean, and it's very easy to get kind of stuck there.
And like the scar massage, I would almost say if you're symptom free, it might be more important for a cesarean than a vaginal to come check in to get on top of that scar massage and all of that. So you mentioned pain. What about like pressure? Like if a mom is just feeling pressure while they start getting up and moving around.
Yeah, that's a really big indicator as well. So if you're not experiencing it, then that's good. Those who do experience it, though, the right word is describing it as pressure. Like when you sit on the toilet, just when you're sitting in general, when you're sitting to standing, if you're feeling pressure or a bulge in the vaginal area, that's a very good indicator that you need to seek help.
So I'm glad you brought up like the coning and the abdominal muscles. I think there's so much out there. Even I get a little bit confused with my background. So I kind of would love to hear from you your thoughts on should we be encouraging people to check themselves for a diastasis at home, and kind of how do I know what's just normal postpartum recovery versus a diastasis that might need some treatment, because I know we all have a little bit of that.
Yeah, so if you think about it, you have these abdominal muscles right here, and you just had a baby that expanded your belly. There's gonna be some separation where you can do a self-check postpartum, basically where you're lying flat, you lift your head, and you feel for a separation with your fingers. You're probably going to feel a separation though. And a lot of times if you don't have the skill or the training to know what like the depth feels like, the separation between, that can be really scary for someone who with no prior knowledge to feel a separation and think something is wrong. We don't need that postpartum. There's already a lot of other things going on. So you can check, that's okay, just to kind of give yourself a cue like, oh, this might be something that I need to focus on. Basically what that means is that you need to focus on the deep core. And that comes with time postpartum. We base it off of finger widths. That's kind of how we measure it. But 2 finger widths, that's a pretty big separation, is considered within normal limits early postpartum.
So don't freak out if you do the Instagram taught self-check and you feel some separation. Exactly.
And you talked about early on some of that deep breathing that you've been doing. That's where we start with everybody postpartum pretty much, because your pelvic floor to diaphragm, it's a whole system, and we want to make sure that it's coordinated together. And so doing some of that deep breathing is the first place to start with healing diastasis.
What's the best position to work on the deep breathing in?
It's different for everybody. And everybody probably has something different that they like to say. I personally start lying down with everyone because it's gravity eliminated. And so that makes you have to be way more mindful of how those muscles are working. We get out of that pretty quickly though, because that's not really functional all the time. Then we go to seating, standing, working on it in different dynamic positions in your daily functional activities, like when you're doing dishes, when you're breastfeeding. We kind of like start at the basics and then get to where it's a little bit more functional.
So if I like recline here, can you make sure I'm doing my deep breathing correctly?
Sure.
And like show me like your favorite cues to get the deep core, because I think everyone says deep core and it's like, what does deep core really mean, right? That's just such a trendy word.
So one way you can like check for the deep core, knowing like how to engage it, is if you cough. If you give yourself a cough. Sure. Okay. So that's your deep core.
Yes.
Those muscles right there, when they engage, when you cough, when you laugh, when you blow out a birthday candle, blow out bubbles. So here, let me come over here. So whenever you're doing a diaphragm breath, I always say it, sometimes people will say belly breathing. I always say a 360-degree breath. Okay. So your ribs, you actually want them to imagine them expanding laterally versus coming up and down. So sometimes our chest wants to help us breathe. A diaphragm breath, you're expanding laterally, 360 degrees in that abdominal cavity. So air is filling the whole cavity. And then, just like that. And then as you exhale, ribs draw back down. So we talked about earlier the pelvic floor and the diaphragm, they work as a system here. A lot of times we start in the diaphragm though, to make sure that that diaphragm and your ribs are giving yourself mobility to be able to manage pressures that go down onto the pelvic floor.
So if we're thinking about like deep breathing, is there like a number of minutes we should be working on it each day, or just think about it throughout the day, or kind of what's the best?
So it takes some coordination to get started. So a little bit more of an intentional sitting down, lying down, whatever is the most comfortable. 5 to 10 minutes of that intentional diaphragm breathing per day is important.
It's a long time.
It is a long time.
I think I just do like 3 breaths and try to check the box. So,
if that's the most functional, then that's the most functional for you in postpartum. And that's why it's very individualized. For someone who has no coordination of those systems, I always say 5 to 10 minutes because it's important to be able to get that pattern down to then move it to when I'm driving the car, when I'm breastfeeding, when I'm doing dishes, things like that.
So deep breathing, like starting gentle walking, listening to my body's cues. I think that's kind of all where we've been. So that's great. As you start to look like further postpartum, so those like after you go get that all clear from the doctor, which we all know our body is not fully recovered by 6 weeks. Right. But as we start to get cleared for more activity, if we wanted to return to like weightlifting or HIIT workouts or those types of things, are there any precautions, or is it just kind of the same? Listen to your body and don't push through symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to make sure that you're not having a diastasis that's affecting you functionally. So making sure, and if you do, making sure that then you know how to engage the core properly.
How would I know if it was like affecting me functionally?
Yeah, so if you're noticing that coning, like if you lean back and you see an actual cone in the abdominals, that would affect you functionally. So there would be a way that you would need to engage abdominal muscles specifically before you're lifting weights or before you're doing, XYZ, a front load onto those muscles. Same thing with a vaginal bulge or pressure down in the vaginal area. You're going to want to have that assessed and learn how to properly engage pelvic floor and core together so that you can get back to what you need to get back to. And everybody's different. So that's why it's important to be assessed.
to do that assessment, even if you're not feeling, to kind of just have that check-in. Yeah. So what's one thing you wish every woman got told postpartum when it comes to their recovery? This can come from your mom brain or your OT brain. Like, just what do you wish every mom got told?
Oh, man.
Put you on the spot.
I know. That's a really tough one. I think just everything is so physical. Even if you're holding a 5, 7, 8 pound baby, that's not very heavy in theory. But everything is so physical. And so being kind to your body, being gentle to your body is important. And what that looks like for me 2 times now, I haven't felt like I'm ready to move my body in a more rigorous way until about 12 months postpartum with my first, and then I'm almost there with my second. And I'm feeling more so now, okay, I need to start moving my body a little bit more intentionally now. But I'm really glad that I've given myself the time and the like releasing pressures to get back to where I was. And I think just taking the time to go along with the journey, things are going to be different. Every time it happens, it's going to be different. And so just giving yourself the ability to learn the new you with no pressure, no strings attached is important.
Yeah, I think that individualized and giving yourself permission to be okay with that and not compare with someone else is really important. Well, thanks for chatting. Yeah. I think as you can tell from listening to us talk that everyone's journey is so different and there are some nuanced things to look at. So highly recommend, even if you are symptom free, but for sure if you have symptoms, checking in with a pelvic floor PT or OT postpartum. If you're in Waco or even virtually, we can help you walk through those simple checks. And if you are not in Texas, we'd love to help you find resources to get what you need.
Yeah.